Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan. I hope you're doing well. New Year's is on the way. It's coming up this weekend. I thought I would go ahead and get a review out finally, for the last of this old Fear Street trilogy from R.L. Stine, back before Goosebumps even became a thing from what I understand. I don't know if this one was released before that or after that or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it came out before Goosebumps was a thing. I've recently been reading my first ever Fear Street books. I haven't been super thrilled, as many of you have seen from my videos. This one is Super Chiller, or Fear Street Super Chiller, Silent Night 3. Of course, I recently reviewed the first two. The cover's really cool. This is probably my favorite cover of all three. All three covers have looked good, but they're mainly the second and third one here are kind of misleading. You know, I mean, these scenes are in the book. Usually dream scenes, though. Anyway, cool cover. Killer mannequins, blood down their mouth and eyes and that kind of thing. Pretty neat. Silent Night 3. As you know, if you've watched my previous two reviews, I'm not a fan of Reva, the main character of almost all of these books. I can't stand her. Of course, she's the main character of this one, too. And these are Christmas-themed books, but just kind of in passing. They're not really focused around Christmas. It just kind of takes place as a part-time of the year, that kind of thing. Silent Night 3 doesn't really have... I don't dislike it as much as I dislike the first and second book, mainly because of the characters, but I don't dislike this one as much. I actually think the plot, to me, is a little bit more engaging than part 1 and part 2. For me personally, I know it's probably not the big popular thing, but that's how I like this book a little bit. It's back to being more of a middle-of-the-road book versus the really stupid parts of part 2, the really idiot villains, and so on and so on. There's actually some twists in here I really dug, too. But before I get into all of that, of course, this is a spoiler-free review. I'm going to start off with the actual plots and talk about some of the characters that are here. Of course, Pam returns as well. She's less of an idiot here than she was in part 2. Part 1 and part 2 made it really hard to get into those books because of Reva and Pam. So in this story, Reva actually starts off in a relatively decent place, but as the book goes on, she's up to her same old stupid shenanigans and make me I can't stand her. I hate Reva. I had a little bit more hope for her this time around, because it starts off this book with it's Christmas time, and Reva's been in college. She actually brings her roommate, Grace, I think is what her name was. There's so many characters, there's too many characters as a matter of fact. There's so many characters I couldn't keep up with all the names. I'm pretty sure her name is Grace. She brings her roommate, Grace, to her house to spend Christmas with her, because Grace has an abusive boyfriend, and his name is Rory. And she's afraid that Rory is going to hurt her, and so Reva tells her, like, hey, since you're worried about this, I'm worried about you. Just come to my house for Christmas. We'll spend time together there. You'll be safe. You'll be protected. We have security. It's pretty beefed up now since, you know, book 2 happened. And Reva's been through a lot of stuff, as awful as she is, and she still hasn't changed. And this is no more a lesson for her. So, that was nice of Reva. And I thought maybe I was going to start off on the good foot with her. I'm talking about her like she's real. I thought for sure I'd start on a better foot this time around with her, and I did not. Because she was just up to her same old stupid garbage. She always pulls on everybody. Even her closest of friends and family, she pulls terrible things on constantly. Not pranks and stuff, just like gets their boyfriends to cheat on them and stuff. Anyway, the subplot in here that kind of becomes the main plot of the book. Of course, Reva is not working at her dad's store this year. She has some horrible feelings about it, just doesn't want to touch it. Pam is kind of the subplot that becomes the plot. She has a friend that she's making scarves with, and these scarves are beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and Reva gets shown some of these scarves too, because they want to know if her dad will sell them in his store and allow them to do some kind of like, just some kind of advertising, make some money off of it, try to do some kind of business off of that. And Reva basically lies to her dad and tells him that she designed them. Yes, Reva did that. Why does it not surprise me? If you've read these books, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read these books, all this ranting about how awful Reva is probably doesn't really add up, aside from the little hints I give you here and there, because I don't want to spoil the books too much. They're like 200 pages. I don't want to tell you everything, but this is a great example of why I hate Reva. And this part is actually okay as a plot point. It goes somewhere in a decent way. It's actually kind of a nice payoff at one point later on. But anyway, so Pam and her friend are making scarves. They are not getting a contract from Reva like they're supposed to, but Reva also talks her dad into doing kind of like a model show, if you will. Having a runway, having models from the store and models that she hires from outside of the store and the company to come in and actually model these particular scarves and stuff that she's telling her dad that she designed. and murders begin to happen. And it's actually not bad. I will say that. It's not... I wasn't looking forward to reading the book, nor could I get super into it, but I was more interested than I was with Part 1 and Part 2. I think this is a little bit better. I think it has a little bit more going for it. If I had to rank these, I would probably put this at the top at number 1 for me. I won't be doing a ranking video, but that's just kind of my general consensus for me. That's probably an unpopular opinion, frankly. And it probably feels like these books are overdone a little bit, because there are clearly points in this book that, due to the events in Part 1, where we had a whole thing based around the cameras in the store, there are things that happen in this book that should have been resolved a long time ago. Because as soon as they happened, they should have been caught on camera and brought up to the police as information. It's like no one remembers they have cameras. And I understand that you couldn't tell a story because, you know, it's one of those things. Like, if Macaulay Culkin had a cell phone in Home Alone, he couldn't have possibly been in the situation he was in. Or if he had just made the common sense of using the house phone and calling 911, but he didn't do any of that. So it's a little bit of a messy type of thing. I enjoyed the book for the most part. It's got some good twists. Some twists I actually very much like the execution of. They've been done before, but the execution here was good. Stein really kind of pulled this off a little bit for the third book in the trilogy, the one that I was not expecting to like at all after book 2. Because book 1 was rough, book 2 was really rough, book 3 I just didn't expect anything out of, and he pulled it off, I'll give him that. So, with that being said, I don't really have much to say about Silent Night 3. The writing is simple, as usual, that's fine and good too, it's entertaining, the humor kind of works in here when it's there. There is this nice kind of looming threat of this guy named Rory that they suspect may or may not be trying to break into the house every once in a while, or trying to stalk Grace and Riva at certain points. It's kind of neat. I kind of enjoyed that part of the book. It was something different, but I don't want to make you think that I'm super overwhelmed or excited about this book. I do appreciate the more horrific imagery about the murders. That was pretty cool. Not that you're like brutally seeing people get murdered on screen or anything. It's nothing like that, but you are having some brutal imagery towards those situations, and that's kind of neat. We haven't had that really with Part 1 and Part 2, in my opinion. We haven't really had enough of that to really engage me. And going from kind of the first book being more of a robbery-themed book to the second book being more of a kidnapping-themed book, which is full of idiocy, over to this book being more about, we have an actual threat that could come into our house and murder us. That was great. I liked that change over to that. I appreciate that more thriller aspect. Yeah, it was interesting. I liked it. So, Fear Street Super Chiller Silent Night 3 by R.L. Stine. What do I think about this book? What would I rate it? It was a good read. It was fine. About as fine as they get. I wasn't super in love with it. I was interested. I didn't think I would be, but I was. I like the twists and whatnot that actually made this 200-page book for me. It was worth your time. I think if you want to pick up a Silent Night book, this is the one to go with, in my opinion. It doesn't spoil the previous 2 books from what I remember, as Silent Night 2 doesn't spoil Silent Night 1. So if you want to pick up any of these individually after my reviews, you can do that. If you only own one of them and you want to read that one, specifically this one, you can do that. You don't have to have the previous books to do anything to ruin them for you. So that's nice. I do appreciate that for Stein's type of storytelling. He does that with Goosebumps a lot of the time. He does that with these books too. So that's kind of nice. Anyway, when it comes to this book, if I had to rate it on a 5-star basis, I'd probably give it about a 3 out of 5 stars. But like I said, I do like this more than the other 2 books. I think it's a better book. I think it has better twists, better execution. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there were better books before this, because he'd been writing forever when this had already come out. He's a very talented man, a very fast worker from what I understand. A very prolific writer, even. He probably has more books than any writer in existence, even including Stephen King. If I had to say this, I would say that maybe this is about the time that Stein really started getting his formula down to eventually, I'm not sure if this came out when Goosebumps was already a thing or not. I think it was, I don't know. But regardless of whatever, I think this is when he really got the formula down on how to tell a story, with every chapter ending on a really good twist. And the previous books had that, but they weren't done well. You know what I mean? Like, this is really where it hits home, and it works for me. Anyway, 3 out of 5 stars. I'm actually more surprised than I think you guys are. I'm surprised. I'm a pretty good one. I don't know if I'd keep it in my collection, though. I have a lot of books and movies. I'm trying to filter through a lot of my physical collection to try to get rid of some stuff. I don't know if I would hold on to this, but it was a good book. It was a good read. If you're a collector of Stein, you should look out for this one. If you want to read these books, you should read this one out of the trilogy. It is going to be the better one, and if you've recently read book 2 and you're not a fan of that one, you might like this one more. It's not too bad. There wasn't as much stupid as there was in Silent Night 2. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Silent Night 3 or the entire trilogy? Put all that down below. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you, and Happy New Year. Goodbye.